we have three broad themes, right? Digital banking and lifestyle for retail customers, integrate financial services in people's lives as they want it. On the corporate side is supply chains, world trade, SMEs, and all we're doing in the commerce, online commerce, and generally speaking, supply chain space. And then across the board, I'd say, because over time we'll move to a financial system which is handled on completely different rails, digital assets. Not saying Bitcoin's going up or down. I'm saying Bitcoin's here to stay, and so are stablecoins, and so are other tokenized instruments. And so handling this infrastructure is absolutely key. Now, you may ask me, AI, sustainability, oh, absolutely. It's an integral part of everything I've just spoken about. It's not a theme per se, it's a foundational technology, and we employ it in every one of these things. But the biggest challenge is it was a very lonely journey until recently, where digital assets adoption was occurring in a bit of a wild west with early adopters, people doing very interesting things, market caps going up, and very successful companies, but ultimately not at institutional or bank grade. No regulatory framework either, and so people were very scared of it. And so there was an element of evolving from that early adopter stage, and I hate to see early adopters get hurt, but this did happen, and there was an element of that being predictable, into a more institutionalized digital assets industry. And the conviction, again, is it's here to stay. But in order for it to be institutionally adopted, it takes the right kind of infrastructure at scale, robust, safe, trustworthy. You could say bank grade. And that's what we set out to build. That has been very challenging because initially people didn't see it that way, and it's evolved into an industry which is increasingly converging or institutionalizing in the right sort of ways, but we're still early days. We deploy capital in people we work with. We would only do that with people we work with, and that's all right, because we're not A16Z, Sequoia, they're doing a great job. We'll never have the same information flow. What we do have is a bit of an edge in using the product, the capability, and partnering with them, these ventures, in the context of building our own ventures. And so it becomes an ecosystem. In other words, when we find a great capability, which we didn't build, but it's great and it works, and so we don't have to build it, well, we'll partner up, and at times it makes sense to invest. Sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay as well, but we'll partner with many people. And we do this all the time. You may have noticed, some of the investments we made in the region, the Tungsten is an example in the group, in the custody space, and obviously others. The valuations, really interesting there. We've had a period of ever-increasing multiples, ever-increasing valuations. The reality is the investment cycle is, in normal times, going through a cycle, 8 to 10 years. The building cycle is 10 to 15 years. And so an element of patience, an element of it takes time. A venture, a company has to pivot 3, 5, 10 times before we know we're onto something and we can scale it. And that discipline in the iteration, in the building process is critical to building successful, viable companies. And so valuations right now reflect a bit of that, right? End of life fund, people's sort of stuck at times with companies and not wanting to do a down round. And I think it's a bit of an advantage for us, having been perhaps a little more reasonable in terms of our expectations, and also in terms of our expectations as to the time horizon that it takes to create a commercially viable company at scale.
Are your children prepared for the future of money? Order Decoding Crypto with Henry and Hodler, the #1 new release kids book on Amazon.